SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
For any of your garage door needs, such as purchase, install, or service and repairs, Harold's Garage Doors is your one-stop shop in North Mississippi. Don't let a faulty garage door disrupt your day. Call Harold's Garage Doors today at 662-223-0748.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to Middays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East, in for the vacationing rhino. We're in the Element Wealth studio, and we'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this, as Rhino would say, Friday, y'all.
A cold one at that, once again.
I'm tired of this cold weather. Be gone with it.
I told one of the guys back there on the dock, he said, I was complaining about the cold. He said, yeah, well, in a few weeks you'll be complaining about the heat.
That's exactly
Which is very true.
Well, here in Mississippi, we are sort of subject to the extremes. We don't get a lot of moderate weather, but, man, when we do, it's incredible.
Last weekend, I was in shorts on Saturday.
I know. Freezing on Sunday, though.
But I was freezing on Sunday, and that's okay. It is what it is. But, yeah, very cold, but not as humid. And you don't have that humidity in the air,
right.
So it doesn't feel as bad. You know, they always say that, in other parts of the nation, when you go there, it is cold. It's colder if you look at the temperature, but it doesn't feel as cold, whereas here in the South, in Mississippi specifically, it always feels colder or it always feels a lot hotter because of the humidity.
No doubt about it. So, we've been talking quite a bit on the program ever since the president was sworn in about the series of executive orders that he issued that essentially just bans all this DEI stuff across the government complex. So the DOGE boys found, $324,671 grant for, quote, increasing DEI programming for integrated pest management at the USDA.
Wait, what?
It says the USDA priority is to advance racial justice. What the heck does that have to do with pest management? Further proof that this is 100% ideological. All this stuff was to advance an ideological agenda. There was no substance. There was no benefit. There was no value to society. Just plug money all over the place to advance this ideological goal, with their goal being, of course, to secure the support of voters, totally miscalculating that and getting slapped down November 5th. The summary, by the way, this grant to Iowa State University. I'm telling you, Will, these universities, and ours too, right here in this state, they are absolutely awash with all kinds of crazy grants that we pay for, our tax money, that just keeps people employed, gives them something to do, but produces nothing. This proposal aims to enhance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within integrated pest management. And this is what I like. This is what always makes me laugh. They try to make it look so formal.
Yeah.
So after diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, in parentheses, DEIA, integrated pest management, adjacent, in parentheses, IPM, acknowledging potential historical exclusion, the regional IPM centers align with the USDA priorities to advance racial justice. I'm not kidding. And it goes on and on. I'm not going to bore the folks with all of this, but I'm so glad to see this is getting out of here. And, we had a Democrat member of our Senate, Rod Hickman, the state Senate, on the program with us Monday. And we had a good talk. He expressed his disapproval of an anti-DEI bill that has passed our state Senate, headed down to the House. Only applies to community colleges and institutions of higher learning, the main four-year universities in our state, plus community colleges. And it just basically said you can't prioritize certain people based on their physical characteristics, such as race and gender and ethnicity, sexual orientation, sexual identity. You can't do that in admissions or hiring or contracting. You can't promote that as an official position of the university or promote it in the classroom, all the above. I mean, it's just common sense stuff. Basically, I call it an anti-discrimination bill. And I question the senator about his opposition to this legislation. I actually read text from the bill. He said, no, I don't really have a problem with that. And I'm wondering, well, exactly then, why do you oppose this? And he really couldn't give a concrete answer. He said 4 or 5 times. I know listeners tuned in right now remember the interview that were with us then. He said it would have a chilling effect, but I couldn't ever figure out chilling effect on what exactly. So this stuff is, I think, is out of here. You're seeing the same thing across the private sector as well.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, you saw Disney, who was really, for many years, even before DEI was a term. I remember when I was a kid, people lambasted Disney for some of their political positions and some of the things they did. And they were kind of the poster child for DEI stuff. And, they got into an argument with Ron DeSantis right after he became governor, I believe, about DEI stuff, and got into a big heated argument with him. And, with their products have really promoted a lot of this stuff. They're the poster child for it. Well, now they're rolling it back.
You saw what they said. Their president, their CEO, Bob Iger, said, yeah, we need to focus on family entertainment. What tipped you off there, dude? So I got to tell you, you've probably seen, many of our audience have probably seen the interview with Delta CEO Ed Bastian is his name. And he was responding to or participating in an interview. I can't remember which network. I'm sure somebody on our text line will remember. But they were trying to pin him down on the accident that occurred in Canada with the Delta jet that flipped. It just happened, right? Was this because Trump furloughs of FAA employees? And he said no. And I think he shocked her. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was a little shocked, and here's why. Ed Bastian is very left-leaning. Very left-leaning. Mm-hmm. And I may have shared before, Delta Airlines, when we sold our company, that was our biggest customer.
Really?
That was the biggest customer for my company, was Delta Airlines. Now, as you can imagine, airlines are just one big computer. I mean, so they just eat IT. It's how they run, and which is a good thing. That's what makes all this stuff so much more convenient. I remember the old days flying well where you had to get to the airport in time to go to the gate to get your seat assignment, and you'd show up and there'd be 50 people in front of you, and they'd take a little card and pull a little sticker off and put it on your paper card, sort of paper stock ticket. You had no online reservation. You had to call a travel agent or Delta themselves and do. So, I mean, I'm just kind of recounting all the progress that's been made from an IT perspective that operates airlines. Well, I got curious. I subscribe to the Harvard Business Review, have for a couple of decades, and it's not as most people may think, left-leaning. It's actually not. And the Harvard Business School is not like the rest of Harvard. It's a separate. It's more conservative, and it's more logical and rational. But they'll do some really neat interviews. A professor will interview just a corporate CEO. So I see one come across my newsletter, actually, that I subscribe to, and it's Ed Bastian. This is when I'm still in business. I said, man, I want to hear what he has to say. You know, I've never really had the chance to meet the CEO of our largest customer. I want to hear what he has to say. And within 5 minutes, he says, I just want people to know that I'm only here in this position as the CEO of this major company because I'm a white male. That's what he said. And I said, okay, I don't need to listen anymore. If that's what you think, I don't need to hear it anymore. If you go look at some of their ads and some of their promotional materials, they're all about pushing this DEI stuff all over you. So I didn't mean to turn it into a discussion of Delta Airlines. It's really about how just a new president coming in and defocusing and deprioritizing all that has really flipped our country into a totally different direction, and it's given cover, I think, to people like Delta and Disney and others. But coming up next, folks, really excited about this, is Representative Jason Smith. He's a congressman from Missouri. He, more importantly, serves as the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and how timely it is to have him because they're trying to get a budget knocked out in the Congress. We're coming right back. Stay with us for that. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Sweet little rock and roller. Sweet little rock and roller. Her daddy don't have.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, live from the Element Well studio. Thanks so much for joining us. It's our distinct honor and pleasure to welcome now Representative Jason Smith. He represents Missouri's 8th District, but serves as the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Smith, thanks so much for joining us, sir.
It's great to be with you, sir.
Yeah, man. So first got to tell you hello from our mutual friend, Congressman Michael Guest.
You know, Michael is one of the finest members that I serve with in Congress, and he's a huge fan of your show. So he's like, you need to be on the show. He's a good man, and if Michael Guest asks me to do something, you bet I'm there.
Man, we so much appreciate it. I know that you guys are busy now. You've been off this week, right?
You know, we've not been in session in Washington, which is it's nice. But unfortunately, we got 11 inches of snow in Missouri, so it's been it's been something. But I'm ready for winter to be over with.
I got you. So I know that your highest priority and something that you're directly responsible for is devising a House budget plan. You know that the president has called for one big, beautiful bill that would include extension of the Trump tax cuts, and then, of course, some spending cuts and addressing immigration and energy. Where do we stand?
That's a great question. For your listeners, if they're not like nearly as familiar with the Ways and Means Committee, which I'm chairman of, it's the committee that's oldest in Congress. It's been around since 1789. It's in charge of all of tax policy, all of trade policy, all of Social Security, Medicare, a lot of welfare programs. So it touches a lot of things. It touches every American's lives. And right now, we're working on one big, beautiful bill, as the president would say, that would address border policy, energy policy, spending cuts, but also tax cuts. What a lot of people aren't aware of is that if Congress does not act by the end of this year, we will see the largest tax increase in the history of America. On average, 207 million taxpayers will see their taxes increase 22 percentage points. That's a big impact, and so we need to make sure that doesn't happen. And then also we need to follow through with a lot of the other provisions that the president has campaigned on, like cutting no taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, tax relief for seniors, tax incentives for products produced in the United States. And so we're in the early stages of this process. The budget resolution, which starts the whole process, will be voted on the House floor on Tuesday when we return.
Okay. So we've explained this on the show numerous times, but help us understand this budget reconciliation process and the rules in the Senate, which, of course, require that, honestly, a needle seems like it has to be thread to make the math work. So the Senate parliamentarian approves legislation for passing with a simple majority. The Senate passed a bill last night. Looks like it was another vote-a-rama up until about 4 o'clock in the morning. Numerous amendments offered by the Democrats and Republican Rand Paul, who I believe voted against the measure. You guys are on different paths here.
You know, we definitely have to thread the needle. I was very unfortunate to see what the Senate did yesterday, even after the president this week said that he wants one big, beautiful bill that includes tax cuts, spending cuts, border and energy. Unfortunately, the proposal that they did yesterday was a much more simpler version, which was just border and energy. It didn't have any spending cuts. It didn't have tax relief. And these are huge priorities. What I'd like to remind my colleagues in the Senate is never before in the history of America has two different partisan reconciliation bills ever been signed into law in the same year. And that's what they're suggesting. That's what they're pushing for. It's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is like, let's do one, because there's only going to be one. And so for them to only push a bill that just dealt with border and energy and did not address the huge tax increase that every American's facing, I think is reckless. And that's why we're moving ahead with the one bill. And whenever we push this one bill and send it over to the Senate tomorrow, on Tuesday, they'll be able to make the changes that they want and send it back. But it's too important to play Russian roulette with people's taxes. And that's, in fact, what people are doing if they think that they can wait towards the end of the year. And it's not being smart. There's 26 million small business owners right now that are making decisions of how to invest or how to advise or how to hire within their business structures for tax year 26. And they need that certainty. They don't know if their tax rates are going to be 43.4% or 23.4%. Congress needs to act and give them that certainty.
That's absolutely 100% true. And something else, Congressman, something I personally had to deal with as a former business owner is the lack of clarity on estate taxes or capital gains if you're perhaps entertaining selling your business and monetizing your business. Huge difference that could make if these tax cuts expire.
Huge difference. One other provision that's expiring is there's a large exemption for the death tax. That gets slashed in half if Congress does not follow through by the end of this year on these expiring tax provisions. But you know what? There's a lot of tax provisions that actually 2/3 of the expiring tax provisions affect people who make less than $400,000 a year.
Yeah. That's
huge. You're talking about the child tax credit being slashed in half from $2,000 to $1,000. You're talking about the guaranteed deduction, which 91% of Americans use to file their taxes. That gets slashed in half, and every individual rate, whether you're wealthy or whether you're low income, will go up. This is the last thing that Americans need, is a 22% tax increase when they've already faced a 22% inflation tax over the last 4 years in the Biden economy.
I know you've also got some concerns of just rallying the Republican caucus. You don't have any margin for error, as you know, like lose one vote perhaps to pass this legislation. You got some members from the deep blue high tax states. Nicole Maliotakis is one that comes to mind from New York that really wants to see the SALT cap increase from the present level of $10,000. What do you think happens there?
You know, this is a delicate process, and we're going to have to thread a needle. And the reason why I say that is that whenever Elise Stefanik is confirmed to be the UN ambassador, the majority will be 217 to 215. 217 to 215. So you can't even lose one person at that point. And so that means we have to stay unified. We have to work together. This is the smallest majority that any party has had in the history of the country. And the majority in the Senate's actually larger than the majority in the House, which is very, very rare. And so that means everyone's going to have to give and take. The SALT issue is definitely a major issue to a lot of my colleagues in New York, California, New Jersey. The $10,000 cap that was put in 2017, it's not going to be able to suffice. I don't know what that number is, but it's going to be a balancing act. There's people in our conference that doesn't want a SALT deduction at all, and there's others that want a $100,000 SALT deduction. Well, it's not going to be either one of those, but it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's the same way with the IRA credit, for example. There's some that completely want to repeal every IRA credit, and there's others that want to use a scalpel. And so we have to use a balancing act to get everyone on the page. I cannot lose one person, and we're not. Failure is not an option, though. I am not going to be the Ways and Means chairman and allow the largest tax increase in the history of America on Republicans' watch. When Donald Trump's in the White House and the House and Senate is controlled by Republicans, it cannot happen, and it won't happen.
Amen. That's awesome. What about just you guys getting together with the Senate? Do you see this thing going to conference and you trying to just hammer out the differences? Because as you pointed out, the Senate didn't even address tax reform, and I share your concerns. We're not going to get anything and run out of time.
The first budget resolution that goes will have tax policy in it, and so the Senate will make their changes to the bill that we pass out of the House this coming week, and we'll be able to then start the process for the true legislation. But they'll come around. Right now, the Senate's being the Senate, and this is how they act. But they're the higher chamber, as some people refer, and they definitely believe they're the high chamber.
Representative Jason Smith from the great state of Missouri, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, has been our guest on Middays. Thank you so much, Congressman Smith, for joining us today. Thank you for speaking to the people of Mississippi.
It's great to be with you, and thanks for being the voice for the people of Mississippi. I definitely appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Folks, we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Come on, feel the noise. Girls, rock your boys. We'll get wild, wild, wild. Wild, wild, wild.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. Once again, we are in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you so much for joining us today. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Quick check of the markets. The Dow trending downward by some 340 points. Another sell-off. The NASDAQ was in positive territory, is now turned negative, down 125. Crude oil down $1.46 to $71. And volatility is up. The volatility index, the VIX index, is up somewhat. The Dow trending downward because it's being drugged quite a bit by United Healthcare. It's down significantly today. That's because I don't know if a lawsuit's been filed or an investigation. I'd have to check. This just broke this morning. United Healthcare, the nation's largest health insurer, apparently there's some concerns about their Medicare billing practices.
The DOJ is looking into it. Okay. That's never good for your stock price.
No, and I haven't checked it, but quick check this morning, it was down like $58 a share, something insane.
23% drop in 3 months. They tumbled 9% today.
9 in one day. That's meteoric, as they say.
Oof.
That's big. And so that's dragging. It's a Dow component. That's dragging the Dow down. But the other thing is there's concerns, guys, about stuff going on in Washington. You heard the congressman talk about it. You got the Senate on one path, the House on another. And I did want to sort of clarify something that he mentioned about the Senate and its concerns. You heard Congressman Jason Smith discuss the fact that we've never had a partisan. What he meant by was when you're trying to push something through the reconciliation rules in the Senate, which allows passing legislation with a simple majority. And there is such a process for that. It's also known as the Byrd Rule, by the way. That was because it was Senator Byrd from, I think, West Virginia, who came up with this idea decades ago. And it's been used on a regular basis by both parties. And so you sort of are limited. You're not sort of. You are limited to, and it's not explicit, the limitation. It's the parliamentarian that makes this call on how many big bills can you push through that process in a year. And what the congressman was pointing out is we've never had two partisan reconciliation bills pass in a year, and by not including tax reform in the bill the Senate passed last night, they're putting that at risk, which means your taxes are going up in January. So I full-throated, wholeheartedly support Congressman Smith's position and his strategy, which is to create, as the president asked, one big, beautiful bill that includes taxes and a policy and some funding for immigration, border security, and energy. Now, just for perspective, the Senate in its vote-a-rama last night, ending about 4 a.m., passing their budget resolution, all they did was spend money. All they did in this bill is increase spending, $175 billion for the border, $150 billion for defense, and $20 billion for the Coast Guard. That's basically, in a nutshell, what their bill does. Zero concerning taxes. And I can't say it enough, man. Get on the taxes. Give American businesses certainty, visibility into the future tax environment. They hunker down, freeze up, just as you heard the congressman say. They don't hire. They don't invest. They don't expand.
What did he say? What percentage did he say? 46, 23 to 46, something like that?
I think he said 46% of the provisions in the Trump tax cuts apply to people who make less than $400,000 a year. And that includes the child tax credit as an example, keeping that in place. Now, I got to tell you, I'm kind of a tepid fan of that because all that basically says is if you got children in your house under the age of 17, there's a dollar-for-dollar credit on your income taxes at the federal level. It's $2,000 a child, by the way. It's just a credit. If your tax liability is $5,000, you get this $2,000 credit, your tax liability is $3,000, simply because you have a child under your care. Now, there's a refundable portion. I think it's $1,800 a year, and all that really means is if you don't meet all the requirements and don't have enough tax liability to take the full credit, you still get a check. You could do your taxes and have zero. I don't mean zero taxes owed after you reconcile what you paid in throughout the year and what your tax return calculates. I mean, you don't even make enough money to owe any income taxes. You still get a check. It's helicopter money at the end of the day. This is why, 51% of the households in this country don't pay any federal income taxes. It's because so many of them qualify for all these credits. And let's just call it what it is. Like it or not, it's welfare. Some people may get upset about that labeling. It's what it is because it doesn't require you paying taxes to receive it, even if you don't. Now, the earned income tax credit is a little different that you got to earn income to qualify for that. Nonetheless, the point is that goes away, and that would cause a lot of problems for people that are accustomed to it. You know, anytime you take something away, man, it's just a big problem.
Ask these car dealers when tax time rolls around.
Shoot, yeah. It's a big problem.
Furniture stores when tax time rolls around.
Oh, there ain't no doubt. So you're taking this away, and it could be a problem. But I'm glad to see the House is holding firm under his leadership. I saw Speaker of the House Mike Johnson in an interview yesterday discussing this issue as well, saying, yeah, we're moving forward with one big, beautiful bill. We can accommodate all these issues in one measure, which includes, by the way, cutting spending because, again, as I asked him about, threading that needle, because the way the CBO scores, they look at tax cuts, and they consider that a loss of revenue. Whether it results in that or not, that's how they do the math. Yeah. It's not what's called dynamic scoring. It's just absolute sort of scoring. And so to offset that, you got to do some cuts somewhere. And they're talking about that. One of the big targets, as we've discussed, is Medicaid, although the president came out day before yesterday and said don't cut Medicaid. So I'm really confused about that. And this is something else that's somewhat of a conflict. As I reported a minute ago, the Senate says let's increase spending on defense by $150 billion. Yet Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he told his team, find 8% cuts to our budget each year for the next 5. Now, I did the math on that last night. That would gut defense spending, which is currently at about $870 billion a year. It would take that down to $270 billion a year less spending on defense. And over there in the Senate, they just signed off on a bill that adds $150 in 1 year. So, like, did you guys talk to the Secretary of Defense about this? This is what's so frustrating.
As Trent Lott once said, herding cats.
Exactly. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to me, and I keep up with all this stuff. You can imagine when people out there hearing this saying, what? I know. It's and then over there in the... So one of the things Rand Paul, I was going to talk about that, he did offer an amendment. And it essentially was an amendment that would have cut the $1.5 trillion that the over 10 years now. Keep in mind, every time we talk about these figures, they're all 10 years, except the budget resolution right now, the $150 billion for defense. That's a little different the way they did that, but in the Senate. But the $1.5 trillion that the House is proposing in the way of cuts, Rand Paul simply wanted to insert that in the Senate's legislation as an amendment, and it didn't pass, and he voted against it. He voted against the measure. I believe he was the only Republican that voted against the measure, joining all Democrats, of course. So I think it passed, if I'm not mistaken, 52 to 48, though we have 53 Republicans. He, the dissenting Republican. And, of course, the Democrats forcing all kinds of amendments. That was what the vote-a-rama was all about. And you know what bothers me about this? It's purely political. They know they don't have a chance of passing it. I'm going to get my name on the record showing that I fought for this amendment, and I'm going to get all these Republicans on the record showing how they opposed it, and we're going to use that against them, and I'm going to use it to my favor in the next election cycle. Doesn't really matter whether or not this is good for the American people. It's all about creating a political record. And it was all kinds of dumb stuff that they offered that, of course, is popular within Democrat circles, but is bad for the country. Oh, man. It would, by the way, it would bar any tax cuts, one of the amendments, for anybody that makes more than $1 billion a year. That's what they wanted. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Caleb Sailors, SuperTalk Mississippi multimedia journalist at 11:20.
For all covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. Thanks so much for joining us. Pete said find 8% to cut, but he said it would be reallocated in defense spending. I've read half a dozen reports on this from very reputable media sources. It's not what I see. Not what I see. Also, I saw a couple of these sources that calculated it out to be about $50 billion. That's not true, because 8% of $870 billion is a lot more than $50 billion. That doesn't work out either. So we shall see. I can always count on Will East for a good dose of 80s hair metal. Well done, sir. How about some Rat, says Dan in Hattiesburg.
Rats, man. I was actually talking about Rat this past weekend. That was a great band. I actually gave, I don't know if he was an original member. He was an old guy. I gave him a lift in Memphis one time.
Oh, wow.
We were doing back when I was in music radio, we were at a concert, and the guy needed a ride to the airport. And so he hopped in our station vehicle, and we went to the airport, to the Memphis airports.
Well, my claim to fame related somewhat to that is I played 9 holes with Alice Cooper.
That'd have been much cooler than a ride to the airport.
You know, he's a big golfer, lives in Phoenix, and this was 20-something years ago, and he used to be a spokesperson for Callaway, Callaway Golf. Remember that? And I just happened to run into him. He was on his own at, I'm trying to think of where we were, one of the resorts. It may have been Camelback, and he lived around the area.
Yeah.
We played 9 holes. He's a pretty good player, too.
I got him to do the Land Shark.
Oh, wow.
I was at a meet and greet with him, and I got him to do the Land Shark. And the next week, he was the guest picker on College Game Day. Now, Ole Miss had lost at LSU, and so they dropped in the polls. But because he was the guest picker and he was doing the Land Shark, and it kind of went viral, I was very convinced that if Ole Miss had beaten LSU, they would have shown that picture on College Game Day of him doing the Land Shark. But it didn't happen.
By the way, Representative Jody Steverson says, we need more cowbell.
Need more cowbell.
What a great skit that was. Unforgettable. It comes across my feeds every now and then. I got to stop and look at it because Will Ferrell just cracks up the whole group, doesn't he?
Blue Oyster Cult.
It's so great. Let's see what else we got. Jason in Starkville says Palantir took it on the chin pretty hard. Yeah, it's recovered somewhat. I'm not worried about Palantir. They've got fantastic technology, and I think the best is yet to come for them. We were just talking about the stock market. And Microsoft, down a little bit today, last I checked. They had an announcement a couple of days ago about some incredible breakthroughs in quantum computing, their new technology. As I've said before, I believe whomever owns quantum computing and wins that race is going to dominate the world. We're in good shape there, but there's no doubt China investing heavily in the technology. They see it. They get it. The combination of quantum and AI takes us to new heights. Elon Musk, by the way, a couple of days ago said he thinks by 2030 it'll be common for some American households to have human-like robots. These things will cost $20,000, and that they will be AI-driven. And there's video of his vision, his prototype for that. It's incredible.
I mean, think about it. I've got a robot vacuum.
Yeah.
You see those robot lawnmowers everywhere. It's not.
Yeah.
They even have now a robot weed trimmer.
I've seen that.
I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Because if you'd have told me 20 years ago you're going to have a robot vacuum in your house, I'd have told you you're crazy.
But these human-like robots that Musk is working on.
Look how far we've come.
Incredible. And again, connectivity, ubiquitous connectivity with lots of bandwidth as required for these things to work. And then AI, quantum computing, and, of course, advances in robotics technology. And though I'm all for as much manufacturing as we can have here in the United States, it's not a way to create jobs. In fact, it's quite the opposite. That we're rapidly approaching a point where most factories and even distribution facilities in this country, they ain't going to have no people in them. It's just unnecessary. Amazon, of course, we talked about that, already announced a plan to essentially convert all of their fulfillment centers to complete robotics. No humans in them. All the picking and the staging and the shipping and the packaging all be done by robots in the dark, by the way. That's the other thing they pointed out.
Yeah, there's no light.
Don't need any lights. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. There we go. Rocky had one 40 years ago. Let's see. How would a $5,000 rebate be any different from the helicopter money as far as causing inflation? I got to get to that. It's a great question. And I have some thoughts about that, but also on my way in this morning was listening to conservative economics professor Peter Marisi on the Business Network. He had a take on that was quite fascinating. We'll discuss that on the other side of the break. It's top of the hour. That means Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way. And don't forget, Caleb Sailors joins us from SuperTalk Mississippi News in the next hour.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We are live in the Element Wealth studio. It is a Friday, y'all. Now, Will, the other day, Rhino and I, we were talking about a story involving a transgender athlete in the great state of Maine. And the situation here is, this is, as Rhino likes to say, a dude in a dress, a boy, that just a couple of years ago finished like 5th in the state pole vaulting championship. This year, competing against the girls, finished 1st.
Numero uno.
Yeah. Oh, we're shocked at that. So, you recall the president made it very clear that he would withhold funding through executive order for any schools that allow men to play in women's sports. Now, here's what's crazy. If anybody has an objection to this, the prior president did quite the opposite. Withhold funding if you didn't allow them. Completely, essentially redefine Title IX.
Yeah.
And in the redefinition, essentially declares, no, there's no difference in a biological female and one who identifies as one. So, Mr. Trump came out on Thursday night, and he addressed this executive order. He was speaking to the Republican Governors Association in Washington, and he said that, we're not going to give Maine any federal money, because they're defying the order. And so there's a bit of a rift going on between the president and the governor of Maine and the state's attorney general. They're both Democrats, and they've responded to this statement. And they're going to continue to defy. Quote, the state of Maine will not be intimidated by the president's threats. It's not threats, you fool. It's federal money. And just as you manipulated, perverted, and modified the rules down in the faceless bureaucratic agency complex to suit your ideology, which includes how money flows to the states for education, but withdraws that if they don't embrace your radical gender ideology. This president says, wait a minute, this is crazy. Not only that, they're tone deaf because polls show that like 70% of the country, right, actually supports this. They don't agree.
That's the thing. These 70, 30, 80, 20% issues They keep going after the 20%.
I don't get it.
It's a losing proposition.
They say, do the governor and attorney general of Maine, it is disturbing that President Trump would use children as pawns in advancing his political agenda. What in the heck do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing?
I know. It's just they keep falling on the wrong side of that. It's not sustainable for them. At some point, there's going to be, I don't know if it's Gavin Newsom, I don't know. Somebody's going to get smart about it.
Yeah.
And they're actually going to side with the Republicans, and they'll get beat up for it, but they'll get elected to something. And I think that'll change the tide for them.
I think that's totally right.
They can't keep doing what they're doing.
I completely agree. A little bit of other news. You saw Kash Patel. He was confirmed by the Senate. Yeah, so the FBI director, I saw some say they objected on the Democrat side because he doesn't have any law enforcement experience. What? Oh, my gosh. How could they be so brain dead? Have you also noticed that all of a sudden inflation is a concern?
Oh, yeah.
The Democrats, no. It's not a concern for the last 4 years. But now, a month into the president's term, it's all of a sudden a concern. And everything that happens, they blame it on him. I just don't think people are buying it. Now, I'll admit I have concerns about some of the president's economic policies as well. But it's ludicrous to attribute what's happening in the economy right now, especially with respect to inflation, to a person who's been in office a month.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and I'm going to tell you another 80-20 thing that the Democrats are losing on is the firing of a lot of these federal workers.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the video, but Brett Baer was with the new Treasury Secretary, and they went and opened the doors, literally opened the doors of the Department of Treasury. It's been closed. It's been locked. Those
Nobody's
doors
in there.
have not opened since 2020, since the pandemic started.
Now, were they at the IRS building?
No, the Department of Treasury.
Okay, because
No.
IRS is part of Treasury.
Yeah.
I know it's empty, too.
They have not the physical doors, okay? Imagine a business where the doors have not opened since 2020. It's been 5 years almost since the physical doors have been opened, and they finally are opening them, and they're going back to work. And they are firing a lot of the people, and they're getting rid of a lot of people. And if the hill you want to die on is getting rid of IRS agents, and that's a bad thing, I got news for you. That might be a 99-1 issue.
6,700 employees. 6,700 gone from the IRS. I guarantee you, they had to send them emails to their homes because that's where they all are, on the beach or something. They're not even working.
Listen to this. At California's Yosemite National Park, the Trump administration fired the only locksmith on staff on Friday. He was the sole employee with the keys and this is the quote, institutional knowledge needed to rescue visitors from locked restrooms. Couple issues there. Number one, institutional knowledge.
Oh, my God.
They can't call the lock. You know, they advertise everywhere. The locksmith does. You can't call a locksmith. Does it require? And who is getting locked in the bathrooms? Should these people be operating a motor vehicle?
Oh, that's disturbing, to say the least. Oh, my gosh.
Institutional knowledge.
Institutional knowledge
of the locks.
How to pick the lock to get somebody out of the bathroom.
And here's another thing. Why are we only giving one guy the key? Yosemite National Park's a big place. Maybe we should spread the keys around to some other employees.
What happens if he's sick or on vacation?
Exactly.
You're locked in the bathroom at Yosemite National Park. Got it.
He goes down to San Diego to hit the beach for a couple days. We can't even open the bathrooms.
Oh, my gosh. So crazy. Brother CC in Sanatobia says, when you're dealing with a person who is for boys playing in girls' sports, you can't reason with them or make them understand common sense because they are insane. And, you know, and that's not to say, and I agree, that's not to say that a person who feels like they ought to be the opposite sex doesn't have an issue. But it's the way to deal with that is not to, okay, you just go play. You get all the rights and all the accommodations of the person in the opposite sex. That's not the way to manage that.
What Riley Gaines said in that chair right there, she told us, she said it wasn't the fact that I was having to, swim against a guy. That was bad enough.
Yeah.
She said we had to use the same changing room.
Yeah, that's right.
She said I had to watch him and he had to watch me change clothes.
That's right.
That's another level of this. Another thing that just makes me angry about it is no one is saying they can't compete. You just have to compete in, with the group that you were born into.
Yeah, you're still afforded the opportunity to participate and compete.
You can still go out there and swim or race or pole vault or whatever you want to do. You just got to do it with the guys.
Yeah.
Because you don't see the opposite, right?
No, right. You don't see that. But we've shared the story about the golfer. It's just big, burly dude out there playing golf against the females. I think 293 members of the LPGA wrote LPGA management and leadership and said, no, this isn't going to work. It's crazy. So, yeah, that's so upside down. It's beyond belief. Jason in Starkville says, did they have Geraldo Rivera with them when they attempted to open the building to the Treasury?
It was great. They physically opened up the doors. I mean, and I was stunned. I was like, that hasn't been opened since 2020?
Unbelievable.
The doors have not physically been opened. That, to me, is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I know that I also saw a report that we're paying cafeteria workers in one of the agency buildings, but there's nobody in there to eat the food. They're not even preparing the food. We're just paying them to come in and man the cafeteria every day. I'm glad the light is being shined on. Yeah, here it is. It just came across the news in the studio. Federal cafeteria vacant for years under Biden, but we're paying the employees, the cafeteria workers. Oh, man. The Beach Boys bumping us out of this segment. When we return, it's Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I got my mind set on you. 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 But it's gonna take money.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. George Harrison, during his solo career, with a great tune bumping us into this segment. We welcome now Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News.
I was enjoying George Harrison a little bit more than that, Chiron. The Beatles individually had some really good hits.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, collectively as a band, they were incredible. Everybody knows the Beatles, but individually,
all successful.
All
solo
great
careers.
It just shows you how wonderful the music was back then.
Talented they were.
Back before I was, walking this earth. No, I'm glad to be here. Rhino's not here, and I know Will doesn't like to do the Friday, y'all. So I'm glad to be here on this Friday, y'all. But we've had a lot going on in Mississippi this week, and I guess the biggest, and I guess this story reached nationwide news outlets, and obviously we covered it every step of the way. But Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, taking a spill and collapsing on the Senate floor on Wednesday, kind of, shook the entire state a little bit when you see, our Lieutenant Governor, the second most powerful person in office in our state, has a medical emergency on the floor. And we were thankful to see that, he was tended to by medical personnel promptly, and then later released a statement on Wednesday saying, guys, I'm okay. I'm fine now. Yeah, I was dehydrated, and basically he said, lesson learned, drink water. But on Thursday, though, the Lieutenant Governor kind of played one of his campaign speeches, something he said a lot on the trail 2 years ago, that he was lieutenant governor that was always working for Mississippi. Well, he played true to that on Thursday. He showed up back to work.
He did.
Look, if that were me, my rear end would not have been back at the Capitol.
He wanted to come back. It's reported that day, that day.
Like,
they wouldn't let him.
That's not going to happen, Governor. But he came back the next day, though, and that's very admirable for him to do so. And and Senator Kevin Blackwell started off after some procedural measures, after they said the Pledge of Allegiance, had a prayer, and went through roll call. He wanted to formally recognize the Lieutenant Governor, and so the Senate gave Lieutenant Governor Hoseman a standing ovation. It was kind of one of those nice, heartfelt moments in Mississippi where you see people, lawmakers from across the aisle, Democrats, Republicans alike, standing in solidarity, supporting someone. Those kind of things kind of bring us together as a state. We see that, okay, this is beyond politics.
Yeah.
This is beyond our differences in opinion, beyond kind of the vitriolic rhetoric that gets espoused left and right. And it was good to see Mississippi coming together. And Lieutenant Governor, he did seize an opportunity. One, he apologized, which I don't think he owed anybody an apology for a health matter that was, out of his control, unless he, just needed to drink some more water. But he did offer a little humor too yesterday on the Senate floor, saying, he wanted February 19th from now on to be known as Hydration Awareness Day. And so he said he's going to have the Rules Committee and Hydration Awareness Day on February 19th. And the senators were all amused. They were laughing. Yeah. They were just happy. They were just happy to see him up there, because that could have been way worse than it was.
And I believe they're gavelled out.
They did yesterday. They gavelled out for the rest of the remainder of the week, and they'll gavel back in on Monday at 4 p.m.
Yep, I think that's where we are.
But we had a lot of action in the Senate, in that chamber. The Senate last week unveiled their tax plan, right? They didn't put it into statute form. They didn't have it written in a bill, but they had the plan released to the public, and I was there in the Lieutenant Governor's office when they were going through. But they did. The Senate bill, the tax bill, passed in committee this week. I know Senator Josh Harkins is the bill's author. I know you've talked to him extensively. He's been on this program, and he's explained the bill ad nauseum. So I'm not going to be exhaustive in talking about the bill. And Gerard, honestly, I wouldn't be able to do it any justice. You could do way better. But we do know that it gradually phases the income tax down to 2.99%. Will lower the grocery tax down to 5% this year if enacted, and then phases in up to 9 cents worth of gas tax. That's kind of the gist of it.
Yep.
And that did pass the Senate, or the Finance Committee. Now we'll see it go to the floor probably next week. But here's what it's going to be: a vehicle bill, just like House Bill 1, because you have a lot of differing elements in the Senate's tax proposal and the House's tax proposal. Obviously, the House's proposal doesn't stop shy at 2.99% of income tax elimination. They're like, no, we're going to get rid of this bad boy over a 12-year period.
That's their priority.
Right, and that's the governor's priority, and he has made that his mission, and he seems like he and Jason White, our House Speaker, are on the same page there. Not saying that Senator Josh Harkins isn't on the same page. I'm sure in principle he wants to eliminate the state income tax, but they want to take a look at it too and say, let's just do this more cautiously. I'm not saying the House is being haphazard by any means in its implementation. I'm not saying that at all. I think, House Ways and Means Chairman Trey Lamar is an incredibly bright individual, and Jason White's an incredibly bright individual. They know what they're doing, but I do think the Senate is, wanting to exercise a little more caution. Now, I am eager to see if they come to the table and reach an agreement. Look, me, Gerard, as a tax-paying citizen, I want to see my taxes decreased, but I want to see them come to the table and have some sort of compromise or a solution that is beneficial to all Mississippians. And but that's where we are on tax bills, and so we'll see what the Senate does. I expect it to go to a floor vote next week, and I'd be shocked if it didn't pass.
Well, it's my understanding that the votes are there.
Oh, yeah.
The big sticking point in the Senate was they could not get comfortable, this is what I'm told, with any increase in the sales tax, as is included in the House plan.
That 1.5%.
The general sales tax. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the options, too, for municipalities. But both do have measures that would make the municipalities whole, which is good because I know mayors are probably thinking, whoa, no, don't do anything that's going to hurt our bottom line.
Yeah.
Right, but we'll see. And I mean, the lieutenant governor had like every Republican senator in the Senate in his office when they went over the tax proposal last week. So the votes were definitely there.
Yeah.
A story now. Moving on from legislation for a moment, a story that's very heartbreaking. A man that is accused of killing a Southern Miss nursing student. Will soon stand trial. Bryson Rivers is his name. He was dating a girl named Lauren Johansson, again, who was a Southern Miss nursing student. He had been arrested in the Nashville area, Davidson County, Tennessee, for beating her and kidnapping her. And he was out on bond, and he was supposed to be like on supervised bond, like where he was monitored. Well, there was a paperwork error in the in that Davidson County area where he was able to abscond to Mississippi. Allegedly, went to Forest County, Hattiesburg area, for those unfamiliar with the counties, and he's accused of killing her in Forest County, stealing her vehicle with her in the trunk of it, and heading down to the coast with her body in the coast and trying to discard any incriminating evidence in Pass Christian. Well, authorities kind of caught on to what was going on in the area, and after discovering Lauren Johansson's body in the trunk of her own vehicle, a manhunt ensued, and then hours later, Bryson Rivers was caught, handcuffed, and locked up in Harrison County on the coast. But they later, through court proceedings and the investigation by law enforcement, they kind of figured out that he had allegedly killed her in Forest County, so they moved him to Forest County where he was no longer detained on the coast, but in Hattiesburg, and now we're going through the court proceedings. He was officially indicted by a grand jury for capital murder, tampering with evidence, stealing a vehicle earlier this week, and he pleaded not guilty, even though his brother, Bryson Rivers' brother, told law enforcement and told officials, like, yeah, my brother confessed to killing her.
Really?
Yeah, and so we'll see. I mean, he's charged with capital murder, and he's pleading not guilty, so he's obviously not going to enter into any plea agreement. So we know in Mississippi, capital murder does incur the death penalty in certain cases, and I'm eager to see as we approach. There hasn't been a specific trial date assigned that I've seen. If one exists, I will inform the public as soon as possible. But I'm eager to see how this plays out and what sentencing he faces if it's the death penalty. Which sad situation, Gerard, and incredibly heartbreaking. I know you're a father with a daughter and a son, and you just don't think of those things happening to your children. You don't want those things happening. Worst. And so, absolutely. And so, so we'll see. But justice is being served here. So that's a good, I'm not saying it's a silver lining, but Lauren Johansson, though, the victim, her father is now appealing. He wants to appeal to the legislature, next year, because they can't propose new bills now, for violent criminals not to be able to get bond.
Okay.
Something that would probably be considered by our lawmakers, but obviously he has an incredible testimony to share as his daughter was slain.
Tell us about the possible change in the scope of practice for certain nurses.
So this is a very, very big hot-button issue in the medical community, one where, the physicians and nurses are heavily divided. Actually, if you want to keep me on to the next segment, I can explain this further.
We can go into it a little bit in the next segment.
Cool.
Yeah. All right,
Sounds
we're coming
good.
right back with Caleb Sellers.
It's gonna take patience sometimes.
From the SeabrookPaint.com Weather Center, I'm Bob Sullender. For all your paint and coating needs, go to SeabrookPaint.com. Today, mostly sunny, high just to 45. Tonight, partly cloudy, low down to 26. Your Saturday, mostly sunny, high near 52. Saturday evening, a slight chance of rain, low around 31. And for your Sunday, a slight chance of showers, mostly cloudy, high near 53. This weather brought to you by our friends at Gaddis McLaurin Mercantile in downtown Bolton. Shop local. Gaddis McLaurin Mercantile, your building supply expert since 1871.
In 1920, John Albritton Sr. opened Albritton's Jewelry in downtown Jackson. With an expertise in watchmaking from his time with the Illinois Central Railroad, John not only sold but serviced pocket and dress watches for his fellow Mississippians. Albritton's has maintained that tradition to this day, with 2 full-time watchmakers on staff that are capable of repairing all major watch brands. Albritton's also offers a vast collection of fine watches built to fit any lifestyle. From dress styles in gold and stainless steel to sporty selections in carbon fiber, Albritton's has the watch for you. Come see why, since 1920, the people of Mississippi have chosen Albritton's as their fine watch store.
Quality and value go hand in hand at Albritton's Jewelers.
Patriotism is alive at A Complete Flag Source. Honor those who serve our country year-round with the U.S. flag made here in the USA. We are ready to help you with all your flag needs. We have all kinds of flag poles, spinner poles, boardroom poles, in-ground poles from 15 to 150 feet, which we can install at your home, school, church, or business. So shop local at a 25-year-old family-owned business. A Complete Flag Source, 5295 I-55 North in Jackson, 601-362-9333, or CompleteFlags.com.
At Fillmore Buick GMC, we strive to make buying your next vehicle easy and take care of you long after you drive off the lot. That means upfront and honest pricing, doing everything we can to make the time you spend in the dealership as short or as long as you need. It means we understand that purchasing a vehicle is more than just a transaction for you. We want you to enjoy the experience as much as we appreciate your business. Find your next Buick, GMC, or pre-owned vehicle at FillmoreBuickGMC.com. Fillmore Buick GMC. You drive everything we do.
SuperTalk News, I'm J.T. Mitchell. As campaign season heats up, the first of what could be a handful of mayoral debates in the city of Jackson will take place on Saturday. Hosted by nonprofit Jacksonians for Jackson, the fantastic mayoral face-off will go from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. inside Dueling Hall. It's expected to include a slew of the 20 candidates seeking office. Ward 1 Councilman Ashby Foote is hoping this question gets asked.
What are you going to do to attract investment to come in and rebuild parts of the city that are not really functioning properly at this point in time? I think that would be a great topic for debate.
Find out more about each candidate running for Jackson Mayor by going to supertalk.fm. And Governor Tate Reeves is in Washington for the Republican Governors Association meeting. President Donald Trump spoke to the group of red state leaders during a Thursday night dinner.
Hey, it's Richard Cross from Sports Talk Mississippi. Join us every day for the college football fix driven by Ford and your local Mississippi Ford dealers. Speaking of Ford, how do you create a tradition of leadership? You power it with impressive towing and hauling. Sharpen it with smart features like a mobile generator and dominate the game 47 years straight. That's Ford F-Series, America's best-selling trucks. A legacy of excellence only at your local Mississippi Ford dealer. Don't miss the college football fix driven by Ford.
Make plans to visit Grammy Museum, Mississippi to experience Music America. Iconic objects from America's music history. Now through April 2025. Featuring iconic objects from artists such as B.B. King, Billie Holiday, Bob Dylan, Buddy Holly, Ella Fitzgerald, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Jimi Hendrix, Leadbelly, Sam Cooke, and Whitney Houston with specific artifacts on display. To purchase tickets or learn more about the exhibit and other events, visit GrammyMuseumMS.org. America's Music Highway is supported by Visit Mississippi and the Mississippi Humanities Council.
Super Talk. Nobody keeps Mississippi informed like we do. With 12 stations covering all 82 counties. If it happens in your state, we're on top of it. The news, the weather, the sports, and the talk that's important to you. The issues that matter to you, your family, and your bank account. It's all right here. And when you're away from home, depend on the SuperTalk app and supertalk.fm to stay in the know. We're proud to serve our fellow Mississippians. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When I was in a We're back with you in the Element Well studio. A little free ride by the Edgar Winter Group.
The Great White Hope.
Yeah, man.
He's albino, or is he still alive?
Twin brother.
Twin brother.
Yeah.
Because it was Edgar
Johnny,
Winter.
was it Johnny Winter?
Johnny Winter.
Yeah. Very talented they were.
That
in their
wispy white hair.
Yeah. I think he was albino.
I think
actually.
Yeah.
Good tune. Appreciate that. So we got Caleb back. Was going to talk to us about this scope of practice legislation.
Right. So, again, this is a big debate in the medical community. Let me get this mic working right. The nurses, nurse practitioners are all for this. The physicians are all against this. So this is House Bill 849. It's authored by Representative Sam Creekmore, who we know is over the Public Health and Welfare Committee. And this bill would expand the scope of practice for advanced practice registered nurses, which would include nurse practitioners, clinical nurse specialists, nurse anesthetists, always have a hard time saying that word, and nurse midwives. So these specialists, right in the nursing spheres, if they have 8,000 hours or practice hours in their respective fields, which I've done the math on this, Gerard, 40 hours a week for 52 straight weeks. This isn't including breaks. This isn't including vacations. That's a little over 4 years worth of your acting in your practice. They will be able to operate or take care of patients without a collaborative agreement with a physician. Right now in Mississippi, state law says that you have to have that collaborative agreement. So now we have physicians, and I've talked to nurse practitioners, I've talked to physicians on this, I've talked to people on both sides of the aisle on this debate. There are physicians in Mississippi, Gerard, that are having to go from hospital to hospital to hospital to meet the needs of patients because we have a physician shortage nationally. Right. But in Mississippi, we're the poorest and sickest state in the U.S. I mean, the numbers bear that out. And we have an aging population, and so it's putting a strain on our healthcare system. And so it's putting a strain on physicians that are having to be at multiple places at one time, but that's not physically possible for a human being. And so this legislation was authored to give nurse practitioners, midwives, people who are experts in spheres that are similar to what physicians do. They do a lot of the same things that physicians do, just without that guidance of a physician or without that collaborative agreement, without having to be under the umbrella of one or tied to one. Now, there are some provisions in the legislation that like 10% of the CRNA's, APRN's work can be reviewed by a physician to make sure that they're acting within their scope of practice and that they're not, there's no malfunctions or malpractice there, but they would still be able to act independently. And I know Representative Creekmore, when the bill passed, he did say it's kind of a vehicle bill. There's going to be alterations to it. I expect the Senate, it's in the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee now. I expect there to be some amendments or changes to it. But especially when it comes to malpractice insurance, I do know physicians have to pay a lot in malpractice insurance, and nurse practitioners don't have to pay as much. Midwives don't have to pay as much. I'm sure that number would be upped for the amount they would have to pay in malpractice insurance if they're taking on patients on their own without kind of guardrails or training wheels surrounding them. But the nurse practitioners want it.
Right.
The midwives
physicians
want it. No. The physicians do not want it. The Mississippi State Medical Association is running ads right now basically saying physician-led teams are the difference.
Always have.
Yeah, and they're saying that's the difference between life and death. And there was a study from the Hattiesburg Clinic that showed where they expanded their team and added a bunch of nurse practitioners and non-physician specialists. And from their study, over 10 years of review between 2005 to 2015, they concluded that it cost more money and wasn't as efficient as a physician-led team. Now, some may argue that data can be skewed because it's from the perspective of a physician, but the numbers are the numbers. But I know you had Dr. Dan Edney, our state health officer, on the show, and his concern wasn't really nurse practitioners, midwives, advanced practice nurses having an expanded scope of practice. His concern was, okay, he said, I'm a physician, I'm biased, I believe in physician-led teams, but I believe in collaboration. We should all be working together to address Mississippi's healthcare needs. But if we're going to do this, if we're going to take the training wheels off, that we need to proceed with caution. And I think that's the right way forward. And that's why the legislation doesn't just allow first-year nurse practitioners to act independently. You have to have 8,000 practice hours, which, again, that's 4 years without any breaks. So that's usually 5, 6, 7 year period that you're working in that field before you can operate on your own.
Real quick, the baseball schedule update before you go.
Right. Everybody's moved their schedules up this week. Ole Miss will take the mound at 2 o'clock against Eastern Kentucky, and but Saturday and Sunday's games will remain the same, and that's for the other two as well. Mississippi State will begin against Missouri State today at 2 p.m., and Southern Miss, this will be the best series of the weekend, Gerard. Southern Miss is taking on La Tech, a good rival, the Bulldogs and Golden Eagles, and that'll be at 4 p.m. today because we've got freezing temperatures all throughout the state.
All right. Sounds good. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on again on this Friday, y'all.
Oh, that's it, baby. All right, so back to the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. How long do you think it will be until the economy will accurately reflect Trump's policies, whether good or bad? That's an excellent question, and there is really no easy, short, direct answer because it sort of depends on the policies that you're talking about. So, for example, let's talk about the tax cuts. That's the front and center, biggest, number one, top priority policy of all that will have significant impact on the economy. If there's more downside to that one, I would say. If the tax cuts for some reason slip, just as we heard Congressman Smith talking about, his fear of the Senate sort of playing with fire and trying to push that thing through two bills. If we can't get one bill through the Congress to the president for signature that extends the Trump tax cuts, that would have a significant deleterious effect on the economy. In fact, you may have seen Walmart. Walmart's a great bellwether for our economic future. Their guidance this week was not good. They said, we had a good quarter coming out of Christmas, but we're concerned about the consumer going forward. Okay, let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Well, we had somebody ask us about the $5,000 potential proposed DOGE dividend. Isn't that helicopter money? It is. Now, the good news there is that the president can't do that on his own. I caught what I thought was a common sense analysis from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. And it's fair to say there are people who line up behind the speaker. Look, when you're serving at that level in politics, you ain't batting 1,000. You're not batting 1,000 if you're the dog catcher, right? Some people are happy with you, some aren't. But what he said in this case was, we need to concern ourselves with paying down the credit card. And I've explained this on social media to a lot of people say, well, they're just using the money that they saved. Well, I'll give you an example that I think most people could identify with. Think about your household. Suppose you have a checking account that's overdrawn by $200, but you got $300 sitting in your savings account, and you have a line of credit of $500, a credit card that's got $500 of available credit on your card, but you're overdrawn in your checking account. Rather than using your savings of $300 to cover your overdraft situation, your negative situation in your checking account, leaving $100 in savings, you just go spend it. So you still have $200 overdraft in your checking account. Worst yet, you use your credit card to cover your future spending because you spent the $300 out of your savings, you got nothing in your checking account, and you just ran up your debt. That's the analogy. And so I actually don't support this policy. It's not like we just discovered this missing money and we're just going to drop that out of helicopters here. It's not that. We literally would have to borrow the money. Now, if we were running surpluses and all of a sudden we're cutting spending, which is going to increase our surplus, and instead of doing that, we say, you know what, let's give the Americans some money because we got it. We don't have to go borrow, and we're good with our revenue versus our spending. We're not in a deficit scenario. I could live with that. And in that scenario, by the way, My concern is that if you drop that $5,000 out of helicopters, you remember what happened in COVID. Surely we all remember. Inflation.
Inflation goes through the roof because now everybody's got an extra 5G.
Yeah. I mean, it was
checking account.
$1,400 back then. There was two or three cycles of it, as I recall.
Everything will get immediately more expensive.
And I remember talking to many of them are our customers, our advertisers. You remember what they were saying? Man, business had never been this good before. It doesn't matter what you're selling. It's because people suddenly had all this extra cash. I was disappointed in that. I heard the Trump's economic advisor this morning when he was asked about that, and it was Kevin Hassett, and he was saying, oh, yeah, this wouldn't be inflationary. People would save it or invest it. That's not what happened last time. Now, some people that have enough money, yeah, okay, I'm going to go buy some stock or something like that. I don't think it's a good idea. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Mike in Gulfport says POTUS needs to pay down the debt with all savings. DOGE finds this chance won't come along again. But we got to explain that again. You're still producing deficits. So it's like, well, I overdrew this month by $500. Next month, I overdrew by $300. Therefore, I'm going to pay debt down. Explain to me how you do that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's being understood here. All these savings do, hopefully, is trim the deficit. If you want to go say, okay, we saved $100 billion because of some finding of DOGE, let's go pay debt down.
I think that's maybe what he meant.
Okay, but you could do that, but you got to go borrow the money to do it.
Yeah.
You still don't have any excess cash with which to do it. All you're doing is cutting losses.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? You're not producing surpluses.
I think that's what he meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that, what I could possibly get on board with is, so finding savings doesn't permit that. I've said this before. Open up our lands and our offshore waters for leases, for drilling, for exploring oil. Private companies pay the United States to lease those lands, those waters, to drill. They also pay royalties, depending on the agreement. I would be okay saying, okay, that's brand new revenue that we presently don't have. I'd be okay with saying we're going to earmark and dedicate some or all of that revenue to go directly to paying down the debt. I think that would send a tremendously powerful message to the business community, to our in this country, to bond raters, and also, more importantly, to our foreign business competitors. We're serious about attacking our debt. We're dedicating new revenue to that. I could get on board with that. But the math doesn't work when you say, oh, wait, we saved money. Because I tell you what else is going on at the same time. DOGE is finding this. Mandatory spending, something I know I've harped on this program a lot. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, automatically, with no action whatsoever, going up organically. And people say, what do you mean by that? Cost of living raise. Everybody out there that's getting Social Security, you guys know it. You've seen cost of living raises. That's not just created out of thin air. That's an expense for which we have no income to cover.
That, and you got people living longer.
Yeah. And the cost of
how many 100-year-old people do we have in the state of Mississippi?
73 on the PERS rolls. right now.
So just in Mississippi, 73 people.
That's when I wrote the article a year and a half ago, doing the research.
Who are the age of 100.
Or more.
Receiving benefits. Knowing that they receive a lot more than what they paid in.
A whole lot more. That's why defined benefit plans such as PERS and Social Security fundamentally are just not, they're not financially sound. They're not sustainable. They are as long, Will, as you keep producing new people, more people, and they're paying in.
If we start off with 100 people, and then a few years later 1,000, then 2,000, and keeps on going up and up and up, but that's not what's happening.
Well, think about this. When the program was created in 1935, it was 45 to 1 people paying in to people receiving benefits out. In the 60s, it was 5.5 to 1. Now it's under 2 to 1.
Wow.
That's all you got to know as to why this is a problem. And PERS has experienced the same. It's had a decline in actives and a relative increase in people drawing out.
Would the federal government ever look at maybe offering private, meaning that I can invest my money into a mutual fund or something like that?
It's been discussed.
An optional plan? I don't think it would be.
Here's how that's sustainable. Here's how that works financially. Is if you did what many private companies, by the way, who through the last, going back to the 80s, many of them saw, you know what, they had defined benefit plans. IBM is the one I remember the most. A lot of people, my friends that work for IBM, it was IBM for life. Because you had these incredibly generous plans, these benefits, which included a very lucrative defined benefit plan. And finally, IBM started looking at the numbers, say this ain't going to work long term. So here's what they did: they did a one-time charge off of billions of dollars to fund all future benefits for everybody that was in the program that was entitled to it, but all new employees did not have that available to them. But they did that one-time charge-off. We could do the same thing. If we could just somehow come up with $7-8 trillion and stick it on Social Security, problem solved. And then you're right. We could convert to a private 401k type defined contribution plan. Same with PERS. We could do the same thing. You just need about $10 billion of cash. You're good to go. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with the afternoon portion of Middays. Please stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. I've been home in a year.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. It's Middays. The afternoon portion of the show is now live on this Friday, y'all. Would like to hear your thoughts, says Nina in Grenada, to remove the postal board, Trump's plans to remove the postal board and move the post office under the Department of Commerce. I think the post office is broken. I think it's a virtually unsustainable business model. And you know why the post office lost nearly $6 billion last year? What the main driver of is of their losses?
What?
Pensions.
Yeah.
It's pensions. It's been known. Just like I was talking about in the last segment, all these private companies that said, wait a second, we got to get rid of these things before they collapse the company. The post office hasn't. Obviously, Social Security hasn't. The states that, like Mississippi, that have public employees retirement systems. Now, what's our state doing? Offering, in the form of legislation, a new tier, Tier 5. What would that Tier 5 do? Working with the actuaries. It would essentially create a new program, a new benefit structure for all those who enter the system, I believe March 1st, 2026. Anybody that becomes employed by a public sector entity in the state that historically would have qualified for the full PERS Tier 4 program. Tier 5 is a hybrid combination of PERS benefits and defined contribution plan, like a 401k situation. Still would contribute 9%. I think it's split 4% to PERS, 5% to the defined contribution plan. The employers would still contribute 15%, but right now, in this optional retirement plan that is available to higher ed institutions, many of those workers take, only them in the state of Mississippi, which is kind of a hybrid plan. Here's the problem. The 15% that is contributed by the state, by the taxpayers, all goes first to their PERS and then the rest, all of it, to their defined contribution plan. And so what this program would do essentially is it would cap that at 9%, and the remaining 6% would go to the PERS fund. So it's reducing the benefits for new employees is the bottom line. And there's no cost of living raise guaranteed. It would be discretionary by the PERS board. So it's not a solution unto itself, but it is a way to at least address the unfunded liability. So I take a little bit of satisfaction here of saying that I tried to simplify this issue a million times on the program. Look, it's real easy. You got to have more coming in, less going out, or a combination of the two. And this is a less going out deal. It's essentially what it is. So same amounts going in, less going out. So you're whittling away at that unfunded liability, essentially. The post office, back to that, is broke. And I'm not sure that just moving the management and the agency that's responsible for its operations is going to solve its fundamental financial problem. Are there opportunities to clean it up and make it more efficient, save money? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think you've got this period again of this burden of pensions that I don't think is going away anytime soon. So I think it's great that we're at least addressing it and not ignoring it.
And that's been one of the biggest issues. Has just been like for the past, going back many years, we're just spending.
Yeah, no interest and no exposure.
Both sides. It's
both
not
sides.
just
Agree.
Democrat, Republican, both sides. I remember in the wake of 9/11, Republicans had control of both houses of Congress. They had the White House. And, man, they just went crazy with spending.
There ain't no doubt. And the trajectory took a life of its own, if you will. So the reality is we have to be honest and objective here that we've added the debt when President Trump took office in 2017, sat around $19 trillion. It's now $36. That both presidents, the prior two presidential terms, respectively added about the same amount to the debt, about $8 trillion each.
Yeah.
Now, almost half of that for the President Trump, 45, came in that final year with the COVID stuff. And we could argue all day long about whether or not that was necessary and a prudent taxpayer expense. But the bottom line is it was all borrowed. All the PPP loans and all the stimulus checks and the massive amount of, honestly, a lot of it wasted money that went down to the states. Still having a hard time. Like I saw some report, Will, where all that money was sent to the schools to deal with it nationwide. A massive amount of federal money. Here's money to account for and manage the COVID epidemic. And there are reports that some used them to build new stadiums, stuff like that. So it's almost impossible to police all that, because when you have a massive amount of money like that. On the C Spire text line, the physicians don't want to lose their income because nurse practitioners have to pay them to be in their practice. And this, we're talking about the full practice authority for registered nurses. There certainly could be some truth to that. Honestly, I see the positions of both sides. I really do. And they both make good arguments. I know this. We have a lot of areas in the state of Mississippi where there's a shortage and just a scarcity of physicians. So in my view, if by extending the practice authority of some nurses to at least handle some of those areas, something we talked to Dr. Edney about when he was on the program a couple of weeks ago. I mean, maybe that makes sense if it's done in a responsible and thoughtful manner. It's kind of where I could come down on that. Whenever I get a medical bill, I should get a discount if they spring an NP on me instead of an MD. Interesting. Assuming it's factual, DOGE's findings at Social Security reflected that there are 20 million people in the U.S. at age 100 or over. Census indicates there are only 100,000 of those 100 and over. Is DOGE saying that 20 million people over the age of 99 are receiving monthly checks? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The number of Social Security participants that are listed in the rolls over 100, only a smidgen of them are actually receiving benefits. So, I mean, I think the purpose of that was just to highlight that the systems are just shoddy. And there's no doubt that the IT systems that run our government, including the FAA, did you see that there's some jets still using diskettes to upgrade their systems? I just was just shocked at that.
I mean, if you show that to a 25-year-old, this is a diskette, and don't explain what it is, they don't know.
They don't even
That's
know what
how
it is.
old it is.
I know. Using diskettes. Let's see. It actually depends on how quickly Trump can get the train back on the tracks that Joe Biden derailed, says CC in Stanatobi. We were just talking about earlier about the impact of economic policies. And it's hard to just say, the basket of economic policies has this kind of aggregate effect. Look at Social Security as an example, which is not going to be able to pay all of its benefits by the time many people are retired in about 2023 is the current projection. And I'm all for ending the improper payments in the program. And the CBO told us about this. It didn't require DOGE to expose this. The CBO told us about this back in 2022, 23. Said, it looks like it's about $50 billion a year, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I'm all for eliminating that, fixing that, correcting that. Unfortunately, you need trillions to solve the problem there, the financial problem.
But I would say that part of the thing that I like about it, it's the spirit of it.
I agree.
It's we're finally, instead of just continually adding people who apparently don't go to work.
There's no doubt. I totally agree. The disability program, that is absolutely rife with fraud. I mean, the retirement program's different.
He came when he bought Twitter, he laid off 6,000 people.
Yeah.
And the app is better today.
Yeah.
In fact, they released Grok 3,
Saw
the new
that.
AI stuff. I was messing around with it last night. It's amazing. They're better now after they got rid of 80% of the workforce.
Right, agree. And I think there's a house cleaning that could certainly occur and is occurring, and a judge paved the way for that, by the way, yesterday with the Trump administration. About 6,500 IRS employees are getting the old pink slip, and they're all at home, too, which is even more ridiculous. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Can't interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
EWNF.
Yeah.
Middays, back with you in the Element Well studio today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar. You'll hear part 2 of an interview with author and Mississippi music historian Wesley Smith. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there is Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant. Go to SuperiorCatfish.com for more info. Don't forget to sign up for the fantastic SuperTalk Mississippi News this week, Mississippi newsletter. Just go to supertalk.fm/newsletter. You definitely want to do that, especially during the legislative session. The Senate, by the way, won't be back in action until Monday, having adjourned yesterday. The House, I think, came in to a session for about 10 minutes. And then promptly gavelled out. Kind of in that intermediate period, Will, with all the stuff going on down there at the Capitol. So we were talking a minute ago about the savings that the DOGE team has found, or really just wasteful spending. I don't know if I'd call it savings, but wasteful spending that they put a clamp down on, which includes releasing a number of federal employees that really just aren't providing any value to the taxpayers. So now the new narrative from the Democrats, always blaming everything on tax cuts, right? That this is because the Republicans want to preserve the tax cuts for the rich. This is why they're letting people go, to pay for those tax cuts. And by the way, all this spending that DOGE is finding, same thing. So are you saying then, Democrats, you don't support ending all of this absurd spending? That we just need to keep paying taxes to pay for that, which doesn't pay for it anyhow. We have to borrow money for it.
It's 80-20, man. 80% of the people, which if you presented it to them as it is, they'd be like, yeah, let's cut them.
Unbelievable. Well, same thing for our old friend Robert Rush. He went out to his social media platform, and he recorded this really crazy video that portrays him as a retired person. And he's on up there in age. I don't know if he's retired sort of full-time or not, other than his social media activity and his bloviating. But he shows him on a beach background in the video. He's not actually on the beach, of course, but it's a green screen with that superimposed. And he's sitting in a like a beach chair with beach attire on, sipping a drink. And what he's talking about is why Social Security is broke. And, of course, his reason is because the rich don't pay their fair share. And he goes through the Social Security cap, which is, $160,000 roughly now, and you don't pay Social Security taxes over that. And he said all you got to do is lift the cap, and that'll fix Social Security. In other words, if you make more than $160,000, you need to pay more into Social Security, but you don't get more out. You just pay more in so you can fund the benefits of everybody else that doesn't make that much. And he goes through that whole discussion, and he said it's all about inequality. That's why Social Security is broke. In other words, it's your responsibility when you achieve a certain level of financial success to pay for everybody else's retirement. That's his point. He fully believes that. And, actuaries have run the numbers on that and said, yeah, that would help a little bit. But that's not the only thing necessary, and that exclusively will not solve this problem.
No.
So, unbelievable. Richard from Rankin County says, so we need to stop overdrafting. Correct. You got it. That's it, Richard, with respect to what do we do with these savings, this wasteful spending that the DOGE team is finding. Absolutely. Let's just plow that back into the budget. That means that's less money we need to appropriate. That means that the mandatory programs, such as Social Security, let's say we go find all the people who were actually dead but receiving benefits, and now we just update their record. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. An entry-level programmer could do this. They're dead. Don't pay them a benefit. Check that box on their record.
The Democrats,
it's easy.
The smart move for them would be to say, hey, we need to look at this agency over here.
That's true.
I would buddy up with them.
That's a good point. And show that they're also for fiscal responsibility.
And that would drive the Republicans crazy.
I agree. Because just as I used it against them, apparently you just think we need to just keep taxing people and make the rich pay their fair share so we can keep people that are employed that we don't need.
Schumer said the other day, he said, quote, of course there's some wasteful spending, but you don't use a meat axe and cut everything.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, we do not need a refund of any type. Just find the money that was misspent and put it towards our national debt, says Tim and McGee. Right. I think you're getting it, man. That's totally agree. And good thing is the Speaker of the House of Representatives gets it too. Never mind, I hadn't considered the fact that in reality it would just allow us to borrow less. Yeah, that's from Andy. He sent a text in about what if it were just a prorated rebate. And again, I guess I differ with the White House press secretary, Kevin Hassett, who's a real smart guy, not press secretary, pardon me, the economic advisor. Mm-hmm. Real smart guy. I generally agree with him. On this one, I don't. He pointed to all the stimulus checks that went out under Trump and basically said, no, that didn't cause inflation. I don't believe that.
Yeah, it did.
It absolutely did. There are too many people that we talked to in business said, yeah, man, I don't know where it's all coming from. Well, yeah, we know. People just got new money.
You know, the other thing that was a big news last week was this, gutting of USAID, and all the Democrats and a lot of their media partners come out saying, it's only, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say it's $30 billion. It's only $30 billion.
Right.
It's only, that's less than 1% of, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, the whole time I'm thinking, that's insane that's your argument.
Well, that's how we've gotten.
It's only $30 billion.
Well, it's okay. I'm okay with saying that as long as it's intended to point out you got a long way to go.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with saying as long as you say, well, we don't need to take action on that. It's only $30 billion. No, I disagree with that totally.
Harold Ford Jr. on Fox said on the DOGE cuts, he said, quote, $55 million is not a lot of money. I wouldn't take a victory lap.
Well, you know what they teach you in auditing school? As an accounting major, what they teach you is when you find one little scratch there's more. Keep digging. If you see something that looks out of whack, keep on digging. And that's what this is all about. And that's good advice. So on the C-Spire text line, is PERS messed up because Congress gets full retirement after only one term? A couple of things. First, PERS is the state public employees retirement system. Congress, of course, would be referring to the U.S. Congress. I believe that's what you're talking about. And no, they absolutely do not get full retirement after only one term. That is a complete and total 100% fallacy myth. And I can explain to you real quick. Congress receives the same benefits roughly that every other federal employee does. A member of Congress to vest in the plan has to serve at least 5 years. Okay, so if you're a member of the House, those are 2-year terms. You got to get elected 3 times before you qualify for federal pension benefits, congressional pension benefits. And if you serve 6 years as a member of the House, your benefit, $17,000 a year. That's what you get. Now, that's not nothing, but that is 10% of your salary. The salary is $174,400. By law, a congressional pension cannot be more than 80% of their average high pay. By law. To receive 80%, you'd have to be in Congress 67 years. So there's no such thing as full retirement. You serve one time, 2 years, and you get full $174,400 for life. That is not true. We got to deal with the facts. Yeah. That's just the facts. Hopefully that clarified it. Ray in Clinton says, I'm sure it hasn't been corrected, but we were told years ago that Amazon cooked a deal with Obama for the Postal Service to deliver their packages. The Postal Service loses money on every package they deliver. Not true. It wasn't Obama. That is based on a provision in the rules. It's been in place for a long time, and it's Amazon leveraging the post office for some of their last mile delivery. They're just taking advantage of what's been law for a long, long, long time. That's not what's causing the post office to go broke. I can assure you, it's the pensions that are overrunning the post office. There's a reason why these really successful big corporations years ago got out of the pension business.
Yeah.
They saw what was about to hit them.
And so now the only people that provide pensions are unions.
Yeah, that's right. And most of
the
those are legacy, and that's right, in public sectors. And everybody that's got a union that has a pension, it's killing those. And not only that, you're paying for it every time you go buy something that one of those companies makes. You're paying for the union pension, the egregious union pension. We got half an hour remaining on Middays. Please stay with us.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
What a great tune there. The Hollies, Alan Clark. He's the lad on the lead vocals there. They don't make music like that anymore, Will.
Was it Stephen Stills and the Hollies? Was he in there?
No, he was, of
course,
Tambourine Man. He was in that band. I can't remember the name of them.
Not the Turtles.
The Birds.
The Birds.
Yep,
With a
the
Y.
Birds. Yeah. No, Alan Clark. Stephen Stills wasn't in that band, but he did get his start with the Birds. Wore the little granny glasses.
Yeah.
And of course, Alan Clark and the boys from over there in Britain. That's 1967, by the way. That tune, I remember that. He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother is another great tune. And how good is that?
And House of the Rising Sun.
That would be the Animals.
Oh, the Animals.
That's Eric Burden and the Animals.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah. They're great, too. He's still kicking, Eric Burden. You see him out there on social media every now and then, man. It's just so incredible to see him in his prime in the 60s with the hairdo popularized by the Fab Four, just a straight sort of down bangs, and he had that. Now he's all white. He's in his 80s, of course.
He was with War, too, right?
What's that?
He was with War, right?
Eric Burden?
Didn't he do a song, Spill the Wine? Wasn't that...
He did, but I thought that was the Animals as well.
I may be wrong.
Yeah, so when are they going to get people, this is Joey the Trucker, that can work off the welfare? Well, let's talk about that. What kind of welfare exactly, Joey? Let's talk food stamps for starters. Now, I think the food stamp program needs major reform. I don't think some of the items that can be purchased with food stamps ought to be eligible.
And they've talked about that.
There has been talked about, and there's been talk about a work requirement for that. Though most people on food stamps do work, so just so you'll know, to qualify for food stamps, you can't make more than 130% of the federal poverty level. So if you're an individual, that comes in at about $19,000 a year. And in fact, if you want to go look at the tax article that I wrote, in the examples that are embedded in the article, I have two situations where the taxpayer is receiving SNAP benefits, food stamps. One is an individual, actually a head of household, I should say. It's a head of household, meaning it's a single parent with a child, and the other is a family of four. Now, to qualify for food stamps, a family of four, they cannot make more than $27,000 a year. Imagine running your household with four people in it on $27,000 a year. That'd be pretty hard. So they get food stamps. And you know how much it is? It's like $400 a month to feed a family of four. So, and again, I'm just pointing out the math here. Now, one big problem is we don't do a good job of ascertaining that they're truly eligible based on their income. That's a far bigger problem than people working. Another thing is a whole lot of people work in this country. It's probably outsized relative to the rest of the country right here in the state of Mississippi that don't file tax returns, fully cash. And we don't know. And they can figure out a way to qualify for benefits as well. But one of the big problems is they don't have bank accounts. We have the least banked state in the country. And this is why I have spoken out about Medicaid expansion in Mississippi with a work requirement. Not that I support one without it. I've just tried to temper the expectations of the lieutenant governor and others have said, oh, yeah, we're going to make sure people work to get this Medicaid. Well, Georgia tried that.
Yeah,
they thought they'd have 300,000 people. They got 5,000, and they're paying $26 million a year to administer a program for 5,000 people. And that's because there's a lot of people in Mississippi that qualify for Medicaid based on their income. They just don't want you to know they're working because then they'd have to pay taxes. Remember back in the COVID era when the legislature used federal money, which it was eligible for this purpose, to create grants to small businesses to deal with the COVID situation. I think it was $25,000 grants or something like that. But you had to have a tax return. And we had a lot of people. I had people on the text line saying, I tried to get that $25,000 and I couldn't. Well, is your tax return current? Oh, no. Well, that's why. You hadn't filed a tax return. And that was exposed during that period. So, and again, I'm not saying that we should be focused on, that we shouldn't be focused on getting people to work instead of, it needs to be the hand up instead of the hand out. All for it. Absolutely all for it. And then there's TANF, there's housing assistance. The problem is it all gets scammed. It gets schemed. You get 8 people living in one house, but when they come to check out their household income, it's only 1. And stuff like that. There's all kinds of crazy scams that go on, and it's the deficiency of our systems, and that's one of the things that DOGE is pointing out, which is why it's so good having them involved in this process. Because the first thing they're seeing is these IT systems are terrible, and that's the only way, in my view, to get control over the situation. We have ancient technology.
Whereas if you had more updated systems, they would throw red flags.
Correct.
Like, hey, this.
Yeah, there are 150 in the Social Security rolls. That's a problem.
Something's wrong here. Yeah. We need to look at it, and we don't have that.
So it's a huge problem. Now, I know that we got lots of people that have texted in about the extending full practice authority to nurse practitioners. Look, there's strong arguments on both sides of that. I've been in committee meetings down there at the Capitol where I've watched them, and it's funny, Will, you walk in, usually those meetings are held in the old Supreme Court, the biggest room to conduct a committee meeting, because the health committee is a big committee. The smaller committees, they meet in some of the side rooms on the halls between the rotunda and the respective chambers. On that second floor, you've got the old Supreme Court. It's either the second or third floor that is at the end of one of the halls.
Yeah.
And I've been in there. I was in there when they were debating this subject. And you walk in, and there's a straight aisle that goes into where the meeting is held. Think about a courtroom setting. It's still configured like that with the gate and the fencing around, where the people conducting a trial would be. And there's chairs outside of that. On one side are all the doctors, and on the other side are all the nurses. Because they don't agree on this subject. And there's strong feeling, and there are lobbyists all over the place too, and associations. And honestly, I'll admit it's a little over my head. I mean, I get the concerns on both sides. I totally, really do. And I've watched them present to the legislature, and they both make good arguments, to be honest with you. I do know this. We have a shortage. Like I said, we have health care deserts in our state. And that's not a good thing, because time is of the essence often when you're dealing with medical situations. And we don't want anybody to suffer or drop into a more severe situation or worse yet, God forbid, lose their lives because we couldn't get care that's readily available to them. We don't want that to happen. Got to be some compromise we could come up with. And I know as people send me some long text explaining all that, and that's great, but honestly, I'm not sure I hear you. Sounds great to me, but I'm not sure I'd know what to do in making this decision without really understanding a lot more about it. And that's kind of where I am on that. Lori and Goche says, we need far more oversight regarding the disability issues. SDI, Social Security Disability, is what it's called, benefits. I totally agree, Lori. That, it's ridiculous. Every now and then I get a headache. Okay, here's your check. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. I agree. That is completely scammed. And we're all paying for that. And it's ridiculous. Now, something else, believe it or not, illegals, undocumented immigrants, eligible for disability benefits, not for retirement benefits. I know that's insane. I know.
Crazy.
And all the complaining, and I'm with them, about how FEMA benefits went to like housing illegals, which is ridiculous as well. And now we're finding out often in luxury hotels and stupid stuff like that. So here's the reality. Because that's what the law says. Fix it. You go look at the FEMA site. I did it back when the hurricanes were going through North Carolina. And I said, something don't sound right about that. And there are two major programs in the FEMA system. And one of those is, we don't really care. Everybody's eligible for some sort of temporary housing as needed if you're in this country. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen or on a work visa, a so-called legal immigrant or not. Nope, we're going to take care of you. So Congress, fix it. Hopefully that's what we'll see in this budget resolution that we spoke to Congressman Jason Smith about earlier, that they'll address that loophole and put that to an end. The Hollies once again bumping us out of this next to the last segment on Middays. We got that coming up next.
Hey, this is Will. Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The great Jackson Brown on the C Spire text line. Final segment, Robert and Brandon. Raising the cap on Social Security hasn't helped so far. They've almost doubled the cap over the last 20 years. That's true, Robert, but remember this. Benefits have also increased commensurately. So what this proposal is from the Democrats, and by the way, there are bills, Will, in Congress to do this. I know you're surprised. Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders have both authored different sort of plans, but with the same sort of similar structure, which is we're going to lift the cap or just make people pay Social Security on above the $160,000 cap, talking about their income, into the plan without increasing benefits. So that's the difference, Robert. So right now, you're right. The cap has crept up, adjusted for inflation, but so have the benefits. This says, we're going to get rid of the cap or raise the cap. You're going to pay more in, rich guy. You get no more out, though. That's the total difference. The other thing that Sanders wants to do is he wants folks who are earn their a good bit of their income from passive investment income. A retired person that's sold a company. I know somebody like that who makes most of their income from investments. He wants you to pay Social Security on that. I'm not getting any more Social Security benefits. I'm just going to give the government so they can pay somebody else that money. That's a proposal that came out. Now, somebody said something, postal employees are covered under the same federal benefits, the Federal Employees Retirement System, government retirement plan, as all other government employees. There is no separate. Right. And I didn't mean to insinuate that there's a separate plan, but because the post office is operated as kind of a quasi-government entity, totally separate, this is what Trump's proposing to do, is bring it into the administration's control. There's all kinds of things that have happened historically that requires them to fund some of their health care and pension benefits in advance. Okay? And that's the difference. So their plan is more isolated. If you look at the bigger federal plan, that's across the whole federal government. So you got a lot of people paying in, a lot of people getting out. But when you look at the way the income, if you will, the financial performance of the post office is calculated, it just considers its plan, if that makes any sense, just its members. So it's isolated. Do police officers and firefighters and aldermen, mayors, city officials, do they participate in the public employees retirement system, asks Robin Amory. They absolutely do. They're municipal employees, elected officials, all of those people participate. This is why, Rob, that you've heard objection from municipal leaders. Toby Barker, the MML president last year, was on the show a couple of times talking about it.
Mayor of Hattiesburg.
Yeah, Mayor of Hattiesburg, thank you. And also testified last year when our Senate in particular was holding hearings on the PERS plan. And what they were objecting to is you guys up here in the legislature just said we're going to increase the employer contribution rate, but we ain't got any no money at the municipal level to cover that, absorb that additional expense for our employees. And so, yeah, that's a problem. Let's see here. Go back to commodities for food stamps. The cards are too easy to abuse. Yeah, and a lot of them get sold for cash. Agreed. So it's the scamming of those programs, the defrauding of them. And there's no doubt that's costing money. So it's beyond just the safety net it's intended. There's no doubt. We're all paying for that. And we need good technology, good systems, good processes to root that out. Let's see. Too many companies benefit off food stamps. No longer about families. Change the culture. Disabled who really need it can't get on it on the C Spire text line. I think there is some problems with that.
Yeah, and what they proposed, part of it is, and I think this is Robert Kennedy Jr. saying you can't buy junk food.
Right. I'm for that. I totally am for that. First time texter here. I actually went to rehab with Stephen Stills back in the day. Cool guy, a lifetime ago. Wow. As far as food stamps, I'm all for getting help to those who legitimately need it. What I don't want to see is somebody buying ribeyes at Whole Foods, which I witnessed last week. Let's just figure out who truly deserves it and get to them, and let's punish the ones who are ruining it for everyone else. I think that is perfectly aligned with our analysis here as well. I think something like the Crime Stopper program would work to attack much of the abuse of the disability payments as well as other programs being abused. I have neighbors that are working harder every day for cash than I am capable of working, but they get a check, in quotes, every month. The refund that Trump, Elon are suggesting hints at this approach. Yeah, I would be okay with some sort of bounty payment, if you will, to taxpayers if they report legitimate fraud and abuse like this that's vetted and confirmed. Yeah, I'd be for something along those lines. I think that would cause a lot of people to start turning in on their neighbors. But it could get out of whack to where we spend a lot of time and money chasing something down a rabbit hole as well. So I bet we could get smart on that. Folks, we're out of here today. Have a great weekend. Back with you again on Monday. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.